All right, so we're going to talk today about a line of reasoning. This is a review of AP Lit video number 8. So line of reasoning, it's a term that we haven't used a whole lot in class, but essentially it is the logical sequence of claims that work together to defend the thesis or the structure of your essay. And the logical structure of that, right? Another way that the College Board put it in a webinar is that it's the structure or organizational cohesion of a student's response, a connective language, and tissue between ideas and paragraphs. Tissue between ideas and paragraphs. I don't know how you feel about that. I'm not a big fan of it. I think it is overly figurative, but it's basically the order that you put your ideas in and the idea that you connect your ideas to each other and to the thesis, and that your argument moves forward. And that it's not, there's a progression to it. One thing leads to another. Okay. So visually, how might we talk about this? We start with our thesis, and we have, say here 2 topic sentences. I put 2 topic sentences here because that's what I had room for on my screen, right? So you could have 3 topic sentences. You could have 4 topic sentences, right? And of course, this topic sentence is the beginning of your paragraph, right? And those topic sentences, of course, connect to your thesis. Now you notice the direction I put those arrows in. It's not the thesis going to the topic sentence, but the other way around. It's making sure that the topic sentence always connects back to your thesis. Also, there's an arrow connecting them because the topic sentence of one should follow the other. All right, now in each paragraph, you have evidence. And again, I put 2 pieces of evidence here for each topic sentence, mainly for the case of space. You could do more than that. And with all of this evidence, you have commentary. All right, and how does this all work? Right, the evidence supports the topic and the claims, and the commentary comes after the evidence and leads it back to the topic sentence. And in addition, it all leads back to the thesis. Okay, this is really confusing, but let's just kind of take it there for a moment. I know without context, it's hard to understand what I'm talking about. But this is what I want to point out right now, that connections here are ideas and content. They're not necessarily explicit, right? So you don't ever want to say, this relates to the thesis because, right? You're better than that. So it's more of a content-based connection here. So let's provide some context here. Yesterday, I wrote this thesis for you. In Cormac McCarthy's All the Pretty Horses, John Grady Cole's belief in an idealistic life on a ranch as a cowboy in Mexico leads him to discover that the world is an unyielding and brutal place that cares not for the lives of its inhabitants. Okay, so how does this thesis predict a structure, right? We see that John Grady Cole goes from idealistic to belief that the world is cruel, right? And that's a progression in itself. So I might start off with this topic sentence in my first body paragraph, and that is, after the death of his grandfather and the selling of the family ranch, John Grady sets off to Mexico, fully believing that he will be able to live life as a cowboy. Now you might say to yourself, but Mr. Mayo, you're summarizing. I'm not summarizing. I am mentioning a piece of the plot after the death of his grandfather and the selling of the family ranch, and John Grady sets off to Mexico. But the important part there is the claim that he believes he'll be able to live as a cowboy, right? And I could have all kinds of evidence to support this, but I'm just going to put a couple of things for the sake of the screen, right? The first, that he and Rollins, for that matter, cross property lines and borders, right? And we see that they cross highways, they take down fences and put them back up after they lead the horses through. They cross the Rio Grande. Okay, right, here's my piece of evidence. Now, the commentary then is what tells you how this evidence supports this topic sentence, right? And this is the idea that, the cowboy is free and able to roam free and that nothing will stop him. and this again leads to, obviously connects to that topic sentence, but also, right, that idealism, the freedom as a cowboy, goes back to the thesis here, and showing this idealism, or improving that he's idealistic. The second part, from leading to this, okay, well, what about the Mexico part? Who does he think he is? Well, he knows Spanish, and he has this belief that he can work in Mexico as a vaquero. And that again supports the topic sentence here, and goes back to his idealism. But of course, we know that it doesn't always work out that well. All right, so my next body paragraph, and again, I'm only doing 2 for the sake of time here. The topic sentence here is that John Grady witnesses events that don't conform with his beliefs about the world. Actually, I'm doing 3. The first here, Blevins is killed. Okay, there's a piece of evidence. It's a fact. How does it support this topic sentence? John Grady knew Blevins was a child on his own, who could not be the subject of a man's wrath. So he saw, and I apologize for the way that's worded. I would rewrite that. But anyway, John Grady saw Blevins as, in some ways, naive and childish, right? And that someone who more needed to be taught, not necessarily somebody who deserves such wrath, right? And so those two ideas didn't conform, right? The idea that Blevins is killed doesn't conform with who Blevins was, and that confuses John Grady in some ways. Second, John Grady is sent to prison. Okay, this is a fact as well. How does this evidence connect to this topic sentence? That John Grady committed no crime, and the captain did not care what the truth was. John Grady himself cares a whole lot about the truth. This is one of the things that matters most to him, and he is confused with what he sees. So he encounters these things that that don't jive, right? They don't conform with his beliefs about the world. So he ends up changing, right? And we see this in the third topic sentence here, and that John Grady comes to realize the world is cold and brutal. Okay, evidence of this, just a couple pieces, right? We have the killing of the doe there, and he after doing that, he thinks about all the things that he's lost, and he recognizes the terrible price that the world extracts, and I believe the term is for the vision of a single flower, right? So beauty, for a single a single bit of beauty, the world extracts this terrible vision. And this is what he says, or what he's thinking about as he's looking at the doe, which is this beautiful creature that he needs to kill in order to eat. The other piece of evidence I'd use here is the death and funeral of his abuela. And it's here that he realizes that the old and the innocent are all subject to the cruelties of the world, and that growing up means a loss of optimism and recognition of the tragedies of life. His abuela, who was old and never hurt anyone and helped to raise him, and he wasn't there when she died, and those sorts of things. And that's how he comes to this belief. Right? And then we would wrap it up from there. And you see how, in terms of a progression, right, starting at his innocent idealism and going to this kind of jaded, more realistic, I might say, view of the world, right? That things don't happen for a reason, that things happen, and they're cruel, and there is no sympathy for those who are caught up in it, those who are affected by it. It's a real happy story. All right. And that's it, right? And so that's what this whole idea of a line of reasoning is, that your argument builds in a way that makes sense, that you have your ideas and you have the way they're written, and that there are connections between those, that the ideas are connected and put in a logical order, and things make sense. Now, this one is kind of chronological. It doesn't necessarily have to be chronological, but it works for this. All right. For tomorrow, Watch video number 9, which is the prose review. It's the prose review of characterization, excuse me. If you want to skip kind of the stuff in the beginning, you can start at 5 minutes and 45 seconds. That's where it gets into the meat of the lesson. There is an attached character chart for the 2009 essay prompt. My video that I'll post tomorrow will review and condense that video, as well as provide answers, possible answers for that character chart as well. All right, well, then I hope to see you then.